Hi, welcome to Courageous Journeys. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Today's courageous question comes from Katya, and she shared a little bit about who her abuser was and that there's still kind of a relationship. Her family has a relationship with the abuser's family, and she was wondering, is it possible to heal if you do not disclose who the abuser is? So maybe you disclose that you were abused, but not name your abuser, not say who that was. And that's something that a lot of people choose to do. So this isn't about not disclosing at all. This question is about sharing that you were abused, maybe with parents or possibly even a therapist or something like that, but not sharing who that person is. So another one that I know a lot of people can relate to, a lot of people have had that experience, which is one of the reasons why people don't want to tell, even in their adult lives, because they're afraid of what it will do to those relationships. And as you've probably heard me say before, any fallout from you disclosing who an abuser was or is not your responsibility. So I do want to say that. So if you choose to share who the abuser was and there's something that happens as a result of that, that is not your responsibility. That is the person who chose to abuse you. It's their responsibility, because if they hadn't done what they did, there would be nothing to disclose. So, having said that, I think it's important to be realistic as well, because I would say more often than not, people don't necessarily disclose who the abuser was to people who know that person. And quite often, the people who know that person don't want to know that the person they know has done that. Doesn't mean they shouldn't still hear it, but it's a very complicated decision to make. And I think it's also very individual. There's no way that I nor anybody else can say, absolutely, you should or should not do this. So to the bigger question about, can you heal if you don't disclose who the abuser is? So for Katya, there's a relationship, right? So that makes it a little bit difficult. I wasn't clear if there's still a relationship that she has with the person that abused her, or just that the parents have a relationship with the parents of the person that abused her. But either way, for the most part, I would say yes, for sure. Where that can get a little bit tricky is if, for example, the abuser is somebody in your family, and you might, let's say a sibling abused you, and you decide to disclose to your parents or maybe other family members that you were abused. But you don't necessarily want to tell them who. You have a right not to tell them. You can share whatever it is that you want to share, ask for support without having to disclose who the abuser was. Now, also recognize that they are very, very, very likely to ask who it was. It's a natural thing to want to know, especially if they care about you and want to support you and maybe have fear that that person might be in their lives or something like that. So it's a very reasonable question that somebody might have. However, you have the right to choose to share that or not. They may tell you that you don't have that right. They may say that you have to tell them, but that isn't really true. And I think it's important to recognize that they may really want to know who that is, and that they have valid reasons for wanting to know who that is. But your reasons for not wanting to share are just as valid. So know that somebody that you share with, they're likely going to ask who it is. They're going to ask, maybe, do I know that person? Is that person still in my life? Those are reasonable questions. But you can say, I'm not ready to share that yet. And you have every right to do that. So, what does healing then look like in a scenario like that if you choose not to share who the perpetrator is? You could say, whatever your reason for telling them, you could let them know what that is. Let them know that. Now, let me say this. If you're aware that that abuser has access to children or that person's children, I'm not going to tell you that you need to tell that person because it's too individualized and there's a lot of things to consider. But I would really encourage you to talk to a therapist about that, because if they have people that they care about at risk for being abused, then I think it may be important to consider the possibility of telling who the abuser is. So, coming back, you could say to that person, assuming that there are no children involved and that person doesn't have access that you're aware of to children or whatever, you could say to the person that you're disclosing to that you're not ready to share, but you just wanted them to know maybe why you're struggling, or wanted them to know because you'd like their support. Now, not everybody is going to be able to do that. That is the unfortunate reality. A lot of people are not going to be able, they don't have the ability, they don't have the strength, the awareness to be with you in that space. And that has nothing to do with you. If it's a friend or something like that that you're wanting to share with, you still don't need to disclose who the abuser was. But again, they may ask, keeping in mind that you do not have to share anything that you do not want to share. So the caveat kind of to this is, and I talked about this in another video, but I'm not recalling right now which one that was. I think it was another Q&A. Can you heal if you still have a relationship with your abuser? So if you say it's a sibling or a family friend or something like that, somebody that your family is aware of, if you're planning to disclose to your family and this person is somebody who is connected to your family and you see that person, you can do a lot of healing without disclosing who that person is, for sure. However, if you have an ongoing relationship with that person, it can make it difficult. It can bring up some other kind of issues that you find yourself dealing with all the time because you're constantly coming into contact with that person or constantly hearing stories about that person. So it can just make the healing process more complicated. So I will see if I can find that video and share a link in the comments for that video, because that might be helpful to watch if you still are in contact in some way or still occasionally see that person. The other thing that I want to say, so I know that this is something that a lot of people can relate to. So she shared kind of the dynamic of my parents are friends with that person's parents or family members or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I think therefore is why she doesn't want to share who the abuser is. She's afraid of kind of the fallout, and she didn't go into specifics, but I'm assuming that that's part of what that is, that there's still this relationship that is going on there. So again, I just kind of want to go back to the natural fear that almost all of us have, that if we share who the abuser was or is, when there are relationships that people have built with this person, oftentimes our desire not to share, or really our fear of sharing who that person is because we feel guilty. We will feel responsible if that person ends up with consequences to what they've done, or if even the people that we're telling have a hard time with it. They're struggling with that reality. They're like going to have to make decisions about, do they want to have a relationship with this person or not now? So we take on that responsibility for all those decisions that they may have to make. And so I just want to say again that if they are struggling with having to reevaluate what they believed about this person, that is the reality as a society of the abuse that people endure day in and day out in our lives. This is not something that only the survivors should have to deal with. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think that, or I believe that until everybody has to face this reality, that until people can recognize that this impacts a lot of people and not just the survivor, things aren't really going to change that much. I know I struggled with this too. In fact, I didn't tell anybody, on my own anyway. I did about the other two people because they weren't close to us any longer. But I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't think that I'd be believed. And I didn't want to hurt my family. I believed all the things that every other survivor believes. I believed that me telling would hurt the people that I cared about. I believed it would even hurt the person who abused me. But the reality is that any fallout is only happening because that person chose to abuse you. If that person had not abused you, you wouldn't have anything to tell. Again, I'm not saying that you should tell, not saying that you need to tell, but it's important for us as survivors to really be honest with ourselves and check in. Why am I afraid? Why do I not want to tell who it was? Because when you put, whether it's your family members and their hurt that they'll experience, or the perpetrator, when you put them and how they feel above your own desire, your own truth, it's reinforcing that you don't matter, that everybody else matters more than you, that your truth doesn't matter, that your hurt doesn't matter, that your need to release the secrecy and maybe not have to be around that person anymore, not have to pretend that that person is great anymore. You're putting that ahead of your own needs. And every time we do that, even though we're not really thinking about it, we're not thinking of it in that way. We're not sitting there thinking, oh no, I'm not going to tell because I'm going to put this person's needs ahead of mine. No, you just think I could never tell, and you feel all this guilt and shame around it and fear. But you feel it because of those reasons. And then when you feel that, it reinforces that you don't matter as much as those other people. So, and I also want to say, as long as you're aware of that, as long as you've recognized that that's what's happening, you can then kind of deal with that. You can deal with that with a therapist. You can process that and still choose not to share who that person is. But you're doing it from a conscious, intentional place. You're healing that part of you that's saying that other people matter more than you do. So as long as you're sharing that and you are intentionally choosing from that place not to share, the impact on you is going to either be very different, or it's not necessarily going to have that kind of an impact on you at all, because you're coming at it from a very conscious, intentional place. But I think it is important when you notice that you worry about what it's going to do, you worry that you're not going to be believed, you fear what could happen to the abuser. Those are all reasons to get help and to process that. And those are not reasons not to tell. What matters with that ultimately is that you know for sure why you're not telling. You've been able to heal that part that believes that your truth doesn't matter, that other people's feelings are more important than yours. So that's a really important piece. And when you sent me this message, Katia, you probably weren't even really thinking about that at all. But I do think that that's an important piece, and that because that is why most people don't want to tell who the abuser is. So you do not have to name the abuser in order to have a lot of healing happen. However, if you have a relationship with the abuser, it's important to see how that's impacting and playing out. And then the third thing is just really recognizing, why do you not want to name the abuser, and then being able to heal that piece. So I hope that this has been helpful for anybody who is watching this. If you've got questions about this video, please share them in the comments. If you've got a question that you'd like me to answer on this Q&A series, please send it to Q&A@courageousjourneys.com, and I will share that link in the description as well. So thank you for joining me. I will look forward to seeing you next time.